going on, everybody? Welcome back to the 31 Days of Horror. I am your host, Mood616, and thank you once again for stopping in, guys. Yes, 31 Days of Horror, Volume 7, Day 29, coming at you live and direct, as usual. Alright, guys, so Day 29 is here, and I figured that why not do a film that actually has 29 in the title? It's a film that I've known about for years. I didn't really know much about it. I just knew that it was this really, really extreme film that was being released on Unearthed's Too Extreme for Mainstream line. And, you know, I'm a big fan of hardcore, extreme type films and things like that. I always like to check them out. But this one seemed like it had a very kind of notorious background. You know, it took a long time to make and things like that, but which we'll get into a little bit later. And, so it officially finally came out on Blu-ray, I think in 2020 or 21, something like that. It was an official Nightmare Film Festival winner in 2019, and is called 29 Needles. Directed by Scott Philip Gorgans, and this is his first full-length film, first full-length feature, I should say. And yeah, so getting into the synopsis of 29 Needles, basically this one follows our main character, Francis. Now, Francis is a person that's dealing with some mental health issues. He's got a lot of demons rolling around in his head. He's got these inner demons. He doesn't understand what they are, where they come from, and things like that. So he starts to experiment with kind of like the psychosexual, painful sex acts and stuff like that. Basically to subdue the demons. This is his idea that if he deals with, painful sex acts, it'll get rid of his demons. But the problem is that, the deeper he gets into these sexual violent acts and stuff like that, the more demons kind of arise. And he basically transcends into a very, very dark world where the demons have kind of taken over, and it's kind of blurred the lines of reality, where he doesn't even know if things are even reality or fake anymore and stuff like that. So, yeah, so that's basically the premise of the film. Now, my thoughts on 29 Needles. Wow. Okay, so Unearthed films, too extreme for mainstream. Yes, this belongs on that line, hands down. So this is a full-blown psychosexual, hardcore, violent sex act kind of art house film. It's a great character study of this character named Francis Bacon. Like I said, in synopsis, he's dealing with these demons and things like that, and he just transcends into such a dark place. So what we get here is a lot, and I will warn people, man, this is not going to be for everybody. We get a lot of really hardcore sex acts in this movie. A lot of gay acts, there's some straight acts and things like that, but it's hardcore. I mean, there's like straight up anal penetration, blowjobs, just whatever type of bondage and S&M and just hardcore violent sex acts you can possibly think of are in this film. It is very, very extreme. I had no idea that it was going to be that hardcore in the sex acts and stuff. A lot of these type of a lot of these extreme films usually focus on the gore and things like that. This one is very, very surprising to me because it really does have a really good core narrative to the film. It's a character study of this guy, of dealing with his inner demons and dealing with like psychosexual acts and things like that, and pleasuring himself with pain and also with others in pain and violent sex acts and stuff like that. And it's showcased here very well. I think that the main guy that plays in this film, Brooke Berry, he plays Francis, did a fantastic job in the lead. Now, getting into the acting of the film, he was cast perfectly. This guy plays this role so damn well. He plays into it very, very well. He really has this... He has this demeanor about him that is just like, it's so damn believable. It's an interesting film because as you're watching all these hardcore sex acts and things like that, you can't help but feel sorry for him because you know that he's dealing with these inner demons and he's just spiraling out of control. He's transcending into a place where nobody really wants to go. So he's kind of a sympathetic character in the sense that, he's not really wanting to physically and totally harm people. It's more about trying to subdue the demons and things like that. It's a very interesting character study, but the casting is perfect. He plays the character absolutely so well. In fact, the acting over this movie is really, really well done. which leads me into kind of where the film comes from. Like, they started production in 2006, and they basically made this movie between like 2008, and I'm not really 100% sure when they finished it. It got its release in 2019 at a film festival, so it took a long time to make. But the way they casted this movie was they actually went online and put out ads for people who are willing to do these sexual acts, and these people were cast based upon what they were willing to do in the film and stuff like that, and they kind of wrote the script around what they had cast for the film and things like that. So I think that's a very interesting way to make a film, which kind of makes sense because, again, the sexual acts in the film are hardcore. It's pretty much porn, violent sadomasochistic type porn and stuff like that. So, but the overall product of this film is really good. It's shot super well. The sound design is fantastic. The effects are fantastic in this film. And, it has this kind of older look, which brings me back to when it was actually filmed. Like they said, it started in 2006. I'm assuming they filmed between 2008 and whatever, but it does have an older look. But it really does capture the mood. And, it captures that transcending feel of, your mental health just spiraling out of control. I love the washed out look to it. It looks really, really great. Now, again, this is not going to be for everybody. In fact, this is going to be for a very niche crowd. Again, it has hardcore sex acts in this, and it's pretty nasty to watch in the aspects. And I'm not talking about the sexual acts for myself. It's more about the personal violence and, painful sex acts that he kind of does to himself. Like, that shit is kind of painful to watch, man. I'm just like, oh damn, bro. But it's more about the effects too, because the effects are so good in the film that there's times where people are getting cut up with knives and shit like that, and it comes off as being very realistic. Like, to the point where you're like, holy shit, are they actually cutting each other? So that is what was kind of disturbing to me. It was vile enough that it was making my stomach turn, which is a good thing. If I'm watching extreme films and you're dealing with effects and shit, I want them to be a little bit more realistic, especially when you're dealing with a realistic narrative, like, dealing with demons and, psychosexual violent acts and things like that. Like I said, again, this is a character study, so everything seems to be a little bit more realistic. And, I think that the way the sex and the violence is portrayed in the film is realistic. So hence the gore not going overboard. It's not splatter. It's not Asian, splatter, gore and things like that. It's nothing like that. It comes and goes in the film, but it gets its point across very, very well, which is intended. My biggest complaint with the film is probably the running time. It runs about 100 minutes. Now, I'm not saying that it overstays its welcome too much. I think it's just a little bit too long for what it is. I think we get the idea of where Francis is heading in this film and where he's transcended to. It probably could have been tightened up a little bit, but with that said, all in all, man, this movie is absolutely batshit crazy. It's nothing what I was expecting it to be. I wasn't expecting it to have such a unique narrative in the fact that, like, it actually made a lot of sense. And, a lot of people look at this film and see the sexual acts and be like, oh, it's just art house or just basically gay porn. You could look at it like that, but there is a narrative here. And the sexual acts that you're seeing is not exploiting, but it's accentuating that narrative, which is dealing with these demons and things like that, and dealing with psychosexual and in that underground world of like sex acts and things like that. And I think it really does work. It was captivating. This movie, right from the start, right from the opening scene where it has Francis jerking off on a dude, and I was like, oh, okay, now I know what I get myself into here. This is absolutely fucking bananas. Like, a bunch of shit happens. I'm like, okay, it sets up the film very nicely, and to my amazement, man, I was captivated right from the beginning by Francis Brookberry's character. He really does not call this one in at all. He does not phone in this performance. It's so well done. I was just captivated by him, and I really wanted him to kind of win in the end. I felt sorry for him. I felt like, there's somebody that you can kind of root for, and it's a very odd feeling when you're watching a film like this, and like, really, the sexual acts in the film became secondary to me. It became part of the norm as you're dealing with this. You're like, okay, so this is how he's transcending, and this is where he's going. It's getting darker and darker, and it's really good, man. I just thought this movie was really well done. Again, this is going to not be for everybody. That's probably like the third time I said it, and I just do want to warn people that you're going to see some things on here. Like, I've honestly never watched a gay porno in my life, but I think I just did. And I'm not saying it's just straight porno, but I have no problems with the sexual acts whatsoever. You know, things that I'm not into, I just take for what they are and things like that. It's like narratives in movies. Sometimes I'm not into the narratives, and you know, I take it for what it is. Even I'll rate movies high, even if I don't even like them, based on how they're made. This is a well-made indie film. I'm very shocked at the level of production in this film, especially the effects and the casting. Like the way he casted this movie to come up with these actors to play these parts in the way they did is just, it's very unique in itself, and it all comes together very nice. And I gotta say, there's this giant penis effect that was built, and it's fantastic. Actually, that scene is pretty nasty, but all in all, man, there is a lot of disturbing scenes with, you know, kind of self-mutilation and things like that. But getting into the title of the movie, 29 Needles, which I have not mentioned yet, I believe is a play on the Albert Fish story where when Albert Fish was arrested, he was found with 29 needles in his pelvic region. There is scenes in this film where Francis is actually breaking off needles into his balls. And we get to see that. Like, he's got his legs up, it's full on penis balls, and he's putting fucking needles into his nuts and breaking them off. It's nasty. It's nasty. It's effective in what it's doing. And, you know, if you can handle these type of visuals and things like that, I do recommend this to those people that are willing to actually accept what they're going to see here. It doesn't overly play art house, but I do like the visuals in the film with, you know, him actually, you actually get to see the demons, you know, you get to see this type of things and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, you know, sex is sex, man. It is what it is. I'm glad that there was an actual narrative to the film that really did work, even though some people might not be able to put the imagery with the narrative. Still, it's definitely there. Highly, highly recommend this one. I'm coming in at a 9 out of 10 on this one. It's actually one of the better extreme films I've seen in such a long time, because generally extreme films don't have narratives. Like, I'm not saying they don't have narratives, but, you know, like a really kind of relevant one too, when you're dealing with, you know, mental health and psychosexual issues with violence and sex and demons and things like that. Here we go. 29 Needles. I could probably go on and on about this one because I found it very fascinating. So, but again, you know, 29 Needles, it's not going to be for everybody. That's why it's put on a very limited line. I think you can only get these on the website. I actually got this at Cinema Wasteland from the Unearthed table. But I'm glad I checked this out. Oh, and one more thing. The guy that plays Francis, Brooke Berry, actually passed away about a month before this movie was to be released by Unearthed or something like that. So he passed away just after they won the Nightmare Film Festival Best Film and stuff like that, which is unfortunate because this guy could have had a nice career, man. He did very well in this role. And but yeah, so 29 Needles. Wow, that review went on a long time. I tried to kind of keep it down, but I could go on and on. I think there's a lot of in-depth stuff here in the narrative. So, but anyways, guys, that's going to do it here for day 29 on the 31 Days of Horror. And as usual, deuces!